Honey is one of the most faked foods on planet Earth. Food fraud researchers consistently rank it near the top of the adulteration list, right beside olive oil. When Food Safety News had supermarket honey lab tested, the majority of samples had been ultra-filtered to remove all pollen, the one fingerprint that proves where honey came from. And one import scheme was so massive that federal agents called it Honeygate, charging companies over roughly $180 million in evaded duties on Chinese honey smuggled through other countries. Your Golden Bear bottle has a criminal underworld behind it. I'm counting down 12 honey brands and products that may not be real honey, and 5 that are 100% pure. Number 12, the generic Squeeze Bear. Start with the most trusted shape in the pantry. That cute bear bottle of amber honey at a suspiciously friendly price is where most fake and stretched honey enters American homes. Here's the economics nobody says out loud. Real honey requires bees visiting roughly 2 million flowers per pound. It cannot be cheap, any more than real maple syrup can be cheap. When a bear bottle costs a fraction of what local beekeepers charge, the difference has to come from somewhere, and investigators have repeatedly found where honey blended with rice syrup, corn syrup, or other cheap sweeteners, mostly overseas, before it ever reaches a US packer. The bear isn't a brand. It's a costume worn by whatever commodity honey was cheapest that quarter. Flip it over and look for a country of origin. If you find a vague blend of imported honeys, you've found the supply chain designed so nobody can check. And here's the part that should genuinely bother you. Testing honey for adulteration is hard and expensive. The fakes are formulated specifically to pass the standard sugar profile tests, so enforcement always runs years behind the fraud. The system catches the sloppy counterfeiters and waves the sophisticated ones through. Your label reading is not paranoia. In this category, it's the only inspection most bottles will ever get, and the next entry explains exactly how they hide the evidence. Number 11. Ultra-filtered honey with no pollen. Pollen is honey's passport. Every batch of real honey carries microscopic pollen grains that a lab can read like a fingerprint, identifying the flowers, the region, even the country it came from. So what did large parts of the industry do? They ultra-filter it out. When Food Safety News commissioned testing of honey from major US retailers, the majority of supermarket samples contained no pollen at all, meaning their origin was scientifically untraceable. The industry's official explanation is clarity and shelf appeal, because pollen can make honey cloudy and speed crystallization. The investigators' explanation is simpler. You remove the fingerprint when you don't want the fingerprint read. Ultra-filtered honey isn't automatically fake, but it is deliberately anonymous, and anonymity is exactly what smugglers of tariff-dodging honey needed. Real raw honey is cloudy, it crystallizes, and it can tell you where it was born. The clear, eternal, glassy stuff has been stripped of its own testimony. Quick pause, hit like and subscribe, because we expose label games like this every week. All set? The next entry is the federal case. Number 10. Mystery Origin Import Blends. Here's the story behind Honeygate. Years ago, the US slapped steep tariffs on Chinese honey after it was dumped below cost on the American market, and some of it was found tainted with unapproved antibiotics. So the honey didn't stop coming. It started lying about where it was from, shipped to other countries, relabeled, and imported as their product, a practice called transshipping. Federal prosecutors eventually charged executives and companies in one of the largest food fraud cases in U.S. history, involving roughly $180 million in evaded duties. The reason this matters at your grocery shelf is that laundered honey needs exactly one thing to survive: labels that say product of multiple countries with no further detail. Every time you see that phrase, you're looking at the door the scandal walked through. It's still open. The next product doesn't even bother smuggling. Number 9. Honey blends and honey syrups. One shelf below the real thing, you'll find bottles labeled honey blend, breakfast syrup with honey, or honey sauce. These are legal confessions. The product contains some honey, mixed generously with corn syrup or other sweeteners, and the label language is the law forcing a sliver of truth onto the front. The packaging does everything possible to blur the line. Same bear shapes, same amber color, same honeycomb graphics, same shelf. The word blend might be the smallest word on the bottle. This is the same play as pancake syrup pretending toward maple, parked as close to the authentic product as legally possible, priced just below it, betting on a hurried shopper. If honey isn't the only ingredient, it isn't honey. There's no middle category worth your money, because the blend exists for exactly one reason: to sell corn syrup at a price closer to honey's. You're not getting affordable honey. You're getting expensive corn syrup with a chaperone. The next trick involves temperature. Number 8. Raw labeled honey that isn't raw. Raw became honey's premium buzzword, and where there's a premium, there's stretching. Genuine raw honey is never heated significantly above hive temperature, preserving enzymes, and it will naturally crystallize over time. But raw has no tight legal definition in the US, so bottles labeled raw can be gently or not so gently warmed for filtering and bottling, because heat makes honey flow through machinery faster. You pay the raw premium, the processor keeps industrial speed, and no inspector is standing at the kettle with a thermometer. Your best defense is behavior, not labels. Real raw honey crystallizes, sets, and turns cloudy over months. If your raw honey stays perfectly liquid and crystal clear for 2 years in the cabinet, the word on the label worked harder than the beekeeper. And know what you lose when honey gets cooked. The enzymes, the delicate floral aromatics, the trace compounds that make honey more interesting than sugar, they're all heat sensitive. Processed honey is caramel-adjacent sweetness. Raw honey tastes like a specific field in a specific month. Once you've had the second kind, the first kind tastes like what it is: syrup with a history erased. The next entry hides the sugar in plain sight. Number 7. Flavored and creamed honey products with additives. Cinnamon honey, vanilla bean honey, chocolate honey spreads, and some whipped honey products pad the jar with more than flavor. Read closely and you'll find added sugars, corn syrup, oils, or flavorings riding along in products that present themselves as fancy honey. To be fair, real creamed honey exists, and it's wonderful. It's just crystallized honey whipped smooth, one ingredient. That's the test. Flip the jar. If the ingredient list says honey and a spice, fine. If it reads like a candy label, you're buying honey-flavored spread at boutique honey prices. The premium gift shop packaging is doing what premium packaging always does in this video, charging you extra to read less. The next offender is sold as medicine. Number 6. Fake Manuka honey. Manuka honey from New Zealand commands staggering prices for its unique antibacterial compounds, and that price built a counterfeit industry. Here's the number that says everything. Analyses have repeatedly found that far more Manuka honey is sold worldwide each year than New Zealand actually produces. The excess is fake, diluted, or mislabeled by definition. Real Manuka is verified through the UMF grading system, or methyl glyoxal ratings, tied to licensed New Zealand producers, with every legitimate license traceable back to the association that issues it. Jars that just say Manuka with a leafy label and no certification are selling you geography as a flavor. If you're paying Manuka prices, the certification is the product. Without it, you've bought ordinary honey wearing a lab coat. The next entries are habits that keep the whole scam alive. Number 5. Buying on color and clarity. Decades of marketing trained shoppers to want honey that looks like liquid gold. Perfectly clear, perfectly liquid, glowing on the shelf. That preference is exactly backwards. Clarity means fine filtering, often the ultra-filtering that erases origin. Eternal liquidity can mean processing, or in crude fakes, a sugar syrup that simply doesn't behave like honey. Meanwhile, the honey that looks wrong, cloudy, thick, half-crystallized, separated, is showing you the natural behavior of the real thing. We reject real honey for looking real and reward fake honey for looking fake. The entire fraud economy runs on that one reversed instinct. And by the way, crystallized honey isn't ruined. That's another myth the clear bottle industry loves. Set the jar in warm water for a few minutes, and it flows again, unchanged. Grainy honey is real honey, doing what real honey does. Retrain your eye. Cloudy and crystallizing is the resume. Glassy and immortal is the red flag. The next habit costs you the best honey on earth. Number 4. Ignoring local beekeepers. In almost every town in America, someone within 20 miles is pulling honey from hives and selling it at farm stands, markets, and local shops. Honey with total traceability. You can literally ask the person who owns the bees, and most shoppers walk past it to buy an anonymous international blend at the supermarket because it's $1 cheaper and 2 aisles closer. Local honey is the one corner of this entire market where fraud is nearly impossible, because the supply chain is a person you can look in the eye. It's also fresher, unblended, and reflects your local flowers. The biggest scandal in honey isn't just what the industry did. It's that the honest alternative was next door the whole time. Number 3 is the one that surprises health shoppers. Number 3. Honey powder and dried honey products. Honey powder sounds like a clever pantry hack, and most versions are barely honey at all. To make honey flow as a dry powder, manufacturers typically blend it heavily with refined sweeteners and starches, maltodextrin, dried syrups, and the honey content can be a minority ingredient in a product with honey as the headline. Same warning applies to many honey-roasted and honey-baked products, where honey in the name often means honey somewhere in a sugar blend. The word honey on processed food is a flavor direction, not a promise. Number 2 is the industry's favorite legal shrug. Number 2, packers that face lawsuits and keep the label. Several major honey packers and famous brands have faced class action lawsuits over the years, challenging words like pure, natural, or raw on their bottles, over everything from processing methods to trace contaminants that plaintiffs argued made the marketing misleading. Companies typically settle or fight without admitting wrongdoing, tweak a word or two, and the bottles never leave the shelf. We're not the court, and we're not declaring verdicts here. We're pointing at the pattern. When an industry's biggest names keep ending up in courtrooms over the accuracy of single words on their labels, the safest assumption is that those words are marketing until proven otherwise. Which brings us to the number 1 rule. Number 1, trusting the front of the bottle at all. Everything in this video collapses into one habit. The front of a honey bottle is a costume: bears, hexagons, sunrises, and words like pure and golden that cost nothing to print. The truth lives in 3 boring places: the ingredient line, which must say honey and nothing else; the origin statement, which should name one country, ideally yours; and the honey's own behavior, whether it crystallizes like the real thing. Fraudsters can fake the front forever. They cannot make rice syrup crystallize like clover honey, and they cannot put a beekeeper's name on a laundered barrel. So here are 5 ways to buy the real thing. First, local raw honey from a named beekeeper. The gold standard, full stop. Total traceability, 0 blending, and you support the pollinators working your own zip code. Find it at farmers markets, farm stands, and local co-ops. If it sets and crystallizes in your cupboard, congratulations, that's the certificate. Second, True Source certified honey. True Source is an industry traceability program born directly from the transshipping scandals, auditing the chain from hive to bottle. It's not perfect, but a True Source logo means the origin claims survived a third-party audit, which is more than most of the shelf can say. Several national brands carry it, so look for the logo. Third, single origin varietal honey. Orange blossom from Florida, Tupelo from Georgia, buckwheat, sage, clover from named regions. Varietal honey is the anti-blend. It advertises exactly where and what it came from, and its distinct flavor is itself hard to counterfeit. Once you taste a true varietal, the flat sweetness of blended commodity honey becomes obvious. Fourth, certified UMF Manuka if you're paying Manuka prices. Buy only jars carrying a UMF number from a licensed New Zealand producer and verify the license if you're spending serious money. The UMF Association maintains a public list. Anything less is paying pharmaceutical prices for a label font. And fifth, comb honey, the fraud-proof format. Honey still sealed in the beeswax comb, exactly as the bees built it, cannot be ultra-filtered, laundered, or cut with syrup, because you're buying the hive's own packaging. It's the single most honest product in the entire sweetener aisle, and spreading a piece of warm comb on toast will ruin bear bottles for you forever. There it is, 12 versions of fake, stretched, or anonymous honey, and 5 ways to buy what the bees actually made. Your 10-second honey test, 3 checks. 1. The ingredient line says honey, one word, nothing else. 2. The origin names one country, and the closer to home the better, with a local beekeeper beating every label ever printed. 3. Watch how it behaves in your cupboard, because real honey clouds and crystallizes over time, and the fakes stay glassy forever. One ingredient, one origin, honest behavior. That's the whole test, and it costs you nothing but 10 seconds at the shelf. Share this with the person in your family who buys the bear. They've been sweetening their tea with a mystery for years. And keep that tea in mind, because if you missed our tea investigation, pesticides and plastic tea bags, it pairs with this one perfectly. That's the video on screen now. Don't miss it.